Mark up first, because we were all harnessed on, it was a green screen, we all had like these wires on. He went up first, and I was just busy talking to someone, and then they go, okay, raise Adam up, so I'm talking to someone, and as I'm going up, I go straight up into his legs, and he's like, oh my god!
By this time, this was 10 minutes later, after I'm hanging about 30 feet, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's about 30 feet off a cherry picker, because we were green screening it. And by then, I was actually talking like that. The harness had gone further and further up my things. and yes, and when I came down, even at lunch, I was talking like that. It took me an hour or 2 hours to get back to a normal voice. We had such fun, and that yelling, ah! It was fun. That was my favourite thing as well.
John?
Oh, I think for me, my favourite scene was the very first one we shot, because we had all been working together on what we called dwarf boot camp, and that lasted for 2 months while we all learned how to walk and move like dwarves, which was it was somewhat complicated because we were told to do it like this. Some of us were rather more butch than that.
Just not being prejudiced.
Having learned how to do that, they then brought in our costumes. My boots, I don't know about the other guys, my boots weighed over 4 kilograms each. So once we got that, all that training went out the window. But we've been doing this anyway for a couple of months. We walked on set day one into Bag End, which none of us have been in the Lord of the Rings films, and I was blown away by the degree of detail, the artistry. It was fantastic. And what did we shoot first? A food fight. Here we were, 14 grown men, and suddenly we reverted to 10-year-old boys at boarding school, chucking food all over the place. It was brilliant. I loved it.
One of the amazing things about filming in Bag End was that we had a set that was for our size, i.e. when we were in there, it was a normal sized building, but then there was another identical set that was a third smaller, where we had our scale doubles who would film in there with the shots that involved Sir Ian McKellen, who would be stooping, while our scale doubles who all came up to here on us. And that was an identical building. So there were 2 of these in the same studio. It was amazing. 2 of them. Oh my God, different size houses.
We were all given earphones and microphones, obviously, so that we could hear the people in the other set when we were doing that. And at one point, we heard Ian McKellen saying, I can't remember which of the dwarves is in what position. And his assistant said, oh, don't worry, mate, I'll tell you what we've got here. We've got some stickers, all right? So there's a green one here for Mark, and a blue one for John, and a pink one over there for this person and that person. And then he said, that's very kind of you. You do realise I'm coloured, right?
Got another question here. Do you find it easier to get into a character with the makeup that you used in this film than in other films that you've done without makeup?
Well, the others can speak for themselves, amazingly. They can. Even without a script. Look, for me, the work that the makeup people did and the costume people was extraordinary. Obviously, they were working from the designs they were given. But as you started applying the layers, and my goodness, there were a lot of layers, we got so hot, a whole bunch of us wore racing car driver vests underneath with little water tubes, and between shots we plug it into a little pump that pumped freezing cold water through, otherwise we would have just expired. Each layer that we put on helped build the character, definitely. For me, putting on the boots defined the way I moved, for instance. Putting on the face, I lost myself, no doubt about it. I was frequently lost, actually. People used to have to come and fetch me from all over the place. So, yeah, those things helped tremendously.
Yeah, for me, definitely the boots. As soon as you put someone else's shoes on, you walk differently. So that's kind of like a kind of key thing for me, is the boots. But yeah, when you're called at 4 o'clock in the morning and picked up half asleep, and then you kind of fall asleep while someone's prodding and putting alcohol and sticking stuff onto your face, and then you wake up and they go, okay, you're done now, and then you look completely different. Yeah, that was that's Ori. That's what Ori looks like. So yeah, a bit of both really. So the shoes and the makeup.
Hi. Each of the dwarves' costumes are really distinctive. Did you get to contribute or put any ideas towards the design of your costumes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted knitted gloves to match my knitted cardigan. Because most of the dwarves are really big and butch, and I was like, oh, I just wanted to have like knitted stuff rather than
They drew the line at slippers.
I think that's a really good question, because a lot of our character development and our relationships flourished from some of the ideas that were furnished from the costume design. For instance, Dory is the character that I play, mothers Ori a lot, so has been his elder brother. So the knitted cardigan and the knitted gloves were probably all knitted by Dory for him, which was something that we played throughout the film with regards to Jed, our middle brother, who would sort of try and get me out of it and say, fuck off, because, oh, sorry, but that's what Jed said all the time, off camera.
There were practical reasons as well. Most of the dwarves had false hands that were prosthetic hands and arms. In fact,
Peter had them cut off our real hands before we started work and had the false hands attached, which made things so much cheaper.
yeah, he's a perfectionist. But in a practical sense, I found I couldn't wear them because I have some arthritis, being really, really old. And so they gave me knitted gloves as well, which was great, except when they asked me to use this 2-metre long staff, and I couldn't quite get a grip on it. And just before we started shooting, they had a shooting test for us all, a film test. And one of the things we did was use our weapons. And Peter Jackson said, okay, John, I want you to imagine there's an orc just below the camera, bring that staff down on his head. So, of course, there wasn't one there. I pretended there was, brought the staff down, hit it onto the ground, smashed the whole thing. Brilliant. And I mentioned this to my stunt man just a couple of weeks later. He said, John, we're 2 weeks in, I've lost 4 of them already.
And we've got a question here.
Just between us, did any perhaps go missing from sets as you left?
This is the genuine article, so is the coin. Quite a few coins went missing, actually.
He got given his. I nicked this. And my brother, Jed, of course, who's playing Nori, is the thief and the kleptomaniac. Over to you, Rosencrantz.
I'm a good boy, I didn't steal anything.
Got a question here. What preparation did you do for the shootings? Reading the book and so on, how many times?
Is there a book?
Preparation in terms of reading
The book.
Tolkien. I skimmed it. Yeah. No, I read it. Yeah, I read it when I got the part. And we did lots. We did 2 months. 2 months of dwarf boot camp when we arrived in Wellington. I think it was kind of Peter's way of making us all bond and be, in the shit together, really. So we were horse riding, we were stunt training, we were dialect lessons, singing lessons,
Weapons.
Yeah. So it was kind of like a.
That was great, actually, wasn't it? And it really did force us all. Well, it didn't force us. It just created this wonderful environment whereby we knew what we were doing and we would just get into the habit of it. And when we got on set, we realised that it worked really well because everyone had their procedure that they went through. The moment we hit the set, we knew exactly what we had to do, what we were with, what we were doing with our families, our brothers, and we got on with it. And when you're working with people like Jimmy Nesbitt and Richard Armitage, just to name a few, Martin Freeman, of course. I mean, it's just amazing when you put these guys into it. And Martin Freeman, naughtiest man in the world, wonderful actor, naughtiest man in the world, wonderful. But it was great, wasn't it?
Oh, it was wonderful. We've got another question down here.
Were there any pranks or any funny stories going on offset?
There was one actor who, on frequent occasions, couldn't find his weapons when we were ready to shoot. I don't know what happened to them, don't know where they went, but William Kircher frequently, as Biffa, couldn't find his particular weapons. I don't know why. I didn't steal them and hide them. I haven't got a clue how that happened.
I think, interestingly enough, the biggest prankster who would love to, when things went wrong, was Peter Jackson. So much so that he became quite fond of the group. And one day we were on set, it's not so much a prank, but he turned up on set one day with a whole lot of jerseys for us all to wear, just his dwarves. And we became known as his little bastards. And we've got actually a jumper that says Little Bastards on the trip. There's 12 of us or 13 of us in the trip going on the journey, and it's called the Little Bastards. But he loved it when things went wrong, didn't he? He was really naughty. He'd love it. He had a terrible sense of humour. Yeah. Another question.
The lady down here had a question.
All right, I'll come down there in a minute.
You mentioned a little bit about this earlier, but I was just wondering if you had a lot of opportunity to do your own stunts and if you enjoy doing that.
That's a very good question. Before we started, each of us was given the opportunity to make suggestions and contributions in terms of writing the character and that kind of thing. Not so much the story, obviously, because we did have, apparently, a script. Although we did start shooting before we'd seen the script, didn't we? So, yes, we did. We were able to suggest things about our character. I got together with Peter Hamilton, who plays my brother, and we talked about our relationship and our family background. Now, a lot of those things aren't actually in the script, but what they do is help inform us as actors as to how we might behave in any given situation. Yes.
There was actually quite interesting. I found that I didn't want to let my stuntman get on. I quite liked it. In fact, we can't tell you about it, but when we were doing barrel acting, that was fun, and there was no way my stuntman was going to get in my barrel. That was absolutely not going to happen. It was like a Disney ride. It was fantastic.
I think they wanted to, but stuntmen were itching to do more work, but in terms of the barrels. But no, my stuntman is, well, I think they all are brilliant.
They were all brilliant.
My stuntman was a guy called Dave, and Dave was a 45, 50-year-old man?
No, 51, I think.
51-year-old man who dressed up and looked exactly like me.
I've actually got a photo. Yeah, keep going. Keep going. Yeah, pass it round.
As long as they get the cell phone back.
Yeah, that's good.
No, we can ask questions and they can pass it around. Go.
Cool. I was actually going to ask about the pranks. I'm Australian and I know...
You're Australian?
Yeah.
So am I. I'm Australian. Where are you from?
Sydney.
Sydney? Oh,
Yeah.
right. I'm from New South Wales as well. Walgett, which is a bit further in.
Walgett? Really?
Yeah,
I
where
taught
Benny
there.
from Hey Dad comes from.
I taught there for 3
Oh,
We'll be
geez,
back
that's
with you
fantastic.
later.
Good on you, mate.
Anyway, I was going to ask about the pranks, but we also, I found, really different in the pub afterwards and interacting afterwards with English people and Americans and things like that. I was just wondering if there's any antics that went on off camera with interaction with, I don't know.
We're not
kids
allowed
or-
to tell you about any of the relationships that broke down, any new relationships that were formed. I can't tell you anything about those. Mark
I had one antic, yeah. One antic which was always happening with Martin Freeman. Martin Freeman is, as I said before, a naughty man, and he always used to draw me into the conversation that we would have. And as you know, Martin's a very good actor, and he would signal me into the conversation with a very serious discussion about acting. So, and this happened about 7 or 8 times during this 2 years. And I would be sucked in completely about discussing what I'd done as an actor and how I processed my part. It became very sort of actually uninteresting. And then when I was about a minute into the conversation talking about Martin would then say, "Why are you in this film? I mean, seriously, you can't act, you can't move, you can't do anything, you can't even sing. Why are you in this film?" And he would do it as though it was real, and then leave. And the first time it happened was at the first meeting we had with Peter, Fran, and Philippa everywhere. He said, "Who the fuck are you?" That's exactly what he said. "Who the fuck are you?" Oh, I've said it again. I'm terribly sorry. Who the hell are you? Who the heavens are you? I do apologise, but there is an R18 warning on the door actually before you came in, so you can't see me. Sorry.
Got another question here.
Were there any particularly good on-camera ad-libs that happened? Because like, we've all heard of like Viggo Mortensen breaking his toe, kicking a rock out of Helmet. Did anything happen like that filming The Hobbit?
There were a few. For instance, when we were being surrounded by the big trolls, he was one of them, yeah, there were things there. So when they had some on the spit, you remember that? There were a few ad-libs there. The rest of us were in our sacks, tied into sacks on the ground. My God, that was hot. Oh, that was very hot. But yeah, there were ad-libs there. And Peter would actually, Peter Jackson would actually take some of those ad-libs and write them into the script, which was brilliant, you know. Things like, we're going to be eating, what? Oh, no, I've got parasites. I've got parasites as big as my arm. Those lines were all ad-libbed and then put into the script, yeah.
You can't reason with them, they're half-wits. That was an ad-lib line that we did when we were on the spit.
Who's next?
I've got a question here.
What was it like to work with John Callen?
Where's that question?
It's over here.
Oh, hi. Now, he's brilliant. Yeah, he's brilliant. My first meeting with Ian was in Bag End, and he'd done his research on all the actors, and he came over to me and said he knew that I did panto. I literally went from doing a panto show. I was doing Sleeping Beauty, and I played a king, I think, a frog king. Anyway, he came over and he was like, in Bag End, he just kept going, "Oh, come on, wishy-washy, this way."
Look out behind you.
Yeah. No, he's one of the kindest and funniest men, and filthy man ever. Yeah, he's brilliant.
Got another question here.
I met John Rhys Davis a couple of weeks back, and he was talking about his time on Lord of the Rings and how stuff on location always went wrong. Like just before Mines and Moria, the lake scene, the location got flooded. So I was thinking, has there been any problems like that on The Hobbit?
When we were filming some of the barrel stuff, which I can't tell you about, we were in a river just outside of a town called Nelson, at the top end of the South Island of New Zealand. Beautiful river called the Pelorus River. And we got into our barrels with our fat suits, and immediately the fat suits, which were foam rubber, filled with freezing cold water. And as we went downstream while they were shooting us, we had stunties and security safety people downstream, and they had strung a wire and a rope across the whole river. So as we came down and were supposed to come into the side, some of us, because of the weight of water and us, just carried straight on down, hit the security of these cables and these ropes, and our arse end went underneath them, and off we went down. So that was a little bit dodgy. And in the same place, just about, we didn't quite finish shooting, but just about, the police arrived, and they said, "There's a big storm, there's a weather bomb coming, you have to get out." Now, down the side of the riverbanks, they had built scaffolding, put in platforms to hold all the gear, the cameras, all the rest of it. And I have never seen a crew work so hard and so fast. Within 12 hours, the place where we had been was underneath 30 feet of rushing water. And a lot of the scaffolding we hadn't cleared, got washed downstream, never saw it again. So yeah, there were a few dodgy moments, but that was the worst of it. And none of you know this.
We've got one more question here.
When you first got the part, how did you feel thinking about Lord of the Rings and how you had to be a part of that franchise and live up to the legend of that?
Where are you? I can't see you. Oh, there. Yeah, it was stupid. It's ridiculous. Like I never ever thought I'd be in something this big or this, this franchise. But I think it was quite dangerous to think about Lord of the Rings. We had to think of it as our own separate movie and our own separate trilogy. Although it's completely linked, and that's the great thing about the worlds. I think if we thought too much about, oh my gosh, this is like Lord of the Rings Part 2, I think I would have gone a bit crazy. So we kind of just did your bit and did it well, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. It was absolutely necessary that we concentrated on making our own film. We weren't looking to live up to anything else. I think also the nature of the book and the nature, certainly of the first film in the Hobbit trilogy, is for an audience, I hope, rather more accessible than the darkness of Lord of the Rings. I think we invest in the characters, certainly of the dwarves early on. We get to know them and we like their lightness and their humour and their comedy, and so we invest in them emotionally, so that as we go through our journey we're thinking, oh, isn't he cute? And we're thinking, oh my goodness, I hope nothing horrible happens. And then in the second movie things retain their humour, but it does get a little more dangerous. And let me tell you, there will be tears before bedtime when you see film 3.
On that note, I'm afraid, to bring it to an end.
That poor child!
You were out there with your camera, I'm sorry, you missed everything. You missed all the fun.
Working hard.
I could see how hard, but the problem was, you weren't moving like a hobbit, and I thought that was a big disappointment.
Well, we don't, we're dwarves.